Back over here, we have our own problems. And yet, some people are not content with that. And so they manufacture non-existent ones just to top the whole thing off. A 21-year-old leftist college student was taken into police custody after they admitted to burning a cross in Grant Park in Chicago, supposedly to protest against the Trump administration. Because, yeah, burning crosses, I mean, you immediately think of protesting the Trump administration. And so, as protest of the Trump administration, he apparently created a race hoax, one that sparked outrage from Democrats who called the hate crime, quote, seeds of racism and fascism. That was before they found out that it had been perpetrated by their side. So, no doubt a new twist on the meaning behind these events to redefine the act in a way that is now justified, maybe even noble, is in the works. But in the meantime, let's recap. This incident literally caught fire on June 9th, when a disturbing video showed a wooden cross burning in Grant Park. Chicago's firefighters extinguished the flames, and police released photos of a person of interest who had been seen fleeing the scene, as reported by ABC7. With no suspects in custody yet, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt of presumably no idea that it was one of their own, although the record for these things being total hoaxes does speak for itself. Illinois' Democrat governor, J.B. Pritzker, rushed at the chance to weigh in, saying, "The fact that it even occurred at all speaks to what happens when the seeds of racism and fascism grow unchecked in our country. The threats are real." At least we agree on that. And in times like these, it's easy to fall prey to despair, to think that the fight for justice is just too costly to engage in, that the mountain is too high to climb, and the path is too narrow to navigate. Well, you would know all about that last one at least. But I mean, I have to give him credit. He didn't burst into song. And then there was the twist. On Monday, NBC Chicago identified a senior at the University of Illinois Chicago, Merlin Liu, as being the perpetrator, who is suspected of carrying out this cross-burning arson. And they identified him as such because he admitted to constructing and burning the cross and placing a red hat, which was supposed to symbolize MAGA hats, on top of his race hoax as a protest, remember, against the Trump White House. At least that's the official story. If you're not an American, for some context, you should know that for decades, the Ku Klux Klan, the Looney Toonies and White Hoods, a notorious white supremacist group, used cross burnings to intimidate black communities here in the United States. But the SPLC funds most cross burnings these days. The reporter, Chuck Goody, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, asked the perpetrator, "How did you land on a burning cross?" And he responded, "It came up to my head one day. I wanted to find something that I could do by myself, like no organization, no friends. Loner, I did know about this historical relevance beforehand, but I didn't know the severity, how racially motivated it may seem from what I did." Bullshit! In reference to the fact that last week Lou had sent a scripted video to the local NBC affiliate, moron, claiming responsibility for the cross burning, saying, "I don't want to wait till his term ends. I don't want to wait until he may or may not get impeached. I want him gone right now. undemocratic. Veruca Schultz. Goody asked, on that video, are you threatening him? And Lou replied, no. Bullshit. I'm sorry. You know, my allergy to lies that a child could outdo is getting worse these days. Goody seemed to agree, firing back, you say that you think he should be brought to an end. Then the full-fledged lies came in. But what do you expect from someone perpetrating a race hoax? As he tried to dodge with, I think, no, I said he deserves to stand trial to the American people. Did not. And Goody pointed out, you use the word end. Having been caught in his own pitiful, pathetic baby lies, and with that tactic having failed him completely, Lou switched to another lib fave, gaslighting sight games, saying, that's what I mean. By end, I don't mean like a civil war, if that's the imagery that you're trying to imagine. Protection! No one mentioned civil war. Where'd you get that? You get the picture. The little coward did it. He knew full well what he was doing. It was meant to be a race hoax. He also meant exactly what he said in his video outing himself. But he's just too cowardly of a little shit to just say that now that it's getting real. The college senior said he was trying to send a message to Trump, and what he labeled as his, quote, MAGA Christian nationalist supporters, like the good little parrot that he is, saying he's just scamming people. And I think that's a great reflection of how this country works right now, where money controls everything. Money has power over healthcare. Money has power over transportation. No, dude. Voters control everything. And your side got fewer votes because their policies were insane, their candidate was a sick joke, and their attempt at convincing people to think like they do was to yell at them to shut up. I hope that clarifies things for you. But having any integrity on the issues is dead for most people. Your position is determined by the footing of your team, not based on the principles that remain solid no matter what your team does. Even with Lou in custody and his motives now being publicly known, Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is as unprincipled political as they get, still said that this faked incident is, quote, a painful reminder of how hatred towards Black Americans still permeates in our society. Even though it's not, because it had nothing to do with hatred. It was a hoax perpetrated by your side. And that fact is part of the record at this point, my dude. You know, is gaslighting really all that you people have? Because that is so 2020. Meanwhile, the FBI is investigating to determine whether the arson still amounts to a hate crime, and either way, it should be prosecuted as an arson, which is definitely illegal whether or not hate was involved. He lit something on fire in a public place. That is arson. Put his little college butt in jail. And that example will go a long way towards stopping this extremist, performative nonsense, especially among young people. Their parents didn't spank them, but that doesn't mean we can't. And speaking of the effects of putting harmful people into positions of power, last December, a Jewish child was choked and strangled with a noose by a classmate during an anti-Semitic attack at a middle school in Boulder, Colorado. And now a federal civil rights complaint has just been filed, alleging in the documents that were submitted to the Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Education that this troubled school district utterly failed to protect this Jewish boy despite multiple prior situations that they were aware of. The official complaint was finally filed last week by the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, on behalf of a middle school student and his family. It alleges that Boulder Valley School District failed in its legal obligations as defined under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits any discrimination based on national origin, including anti-Semitic harassment, in any schools that receive federal tax dollar funding, which they do. According to the filing, this minor, identified only as Student A to protect his safety and his privacy given that he is still a child, was physically assaulted at Southern Hills Middle School by a peer who specifically targeted him because he is a Jew. I hope your parents are proud of the aggressive little bigot that they raised, but they're probably just like you. The complaint reads, quote, "The harassment began with anti-Semitic remarks directed at Student A on the soccer field by classmates, plural. As described further below, it escalated rapidly to include verbal slurs, including repeated use of the word kike directed at Student A, threats, including of gun violence and Nazi salutes in 2024, and progressed to repeated physical assaults, including strangulation, anti-Semitic taunting in the lunch lines, after school, and in class, including organization of a game called Jew Touch Tag in PE, in which Jews are chased. And where was the gym teacher? And Holocaust-related mockery, including a student telling Student A in math class, "At least my grandma didn't spend 8 years in hiding." Yeah, she didn't have to, you little shit. And asking Student A, "Do you get scared when someone raises their hand? And do you get scared when someone counts to 9? The most violent incident occurred on December 15th, 2025, when a classmate fashioned a Chromebook charging cord into a lasso, threw it around Student A's neck without warning or provocation, and dragged Student A backward from a chair while calling Student A stupid kike. Conduct so severe, it resulted in a police report. That incident was followed by a February 26th, 2026 incident in which a former friend of Student A threatened to bring his father's gun to school to shoot people, and then stated in Student A's Spanish class that Hitler should have killed all the Jews when he had the chance. And what did the Spanish teacher do? A March 2026 assault in which a fellow student punched and kicked Student A multiple times, and an April 2026 incident in which a fellow student approached Student A while Student A was playing basketball alone at recess and spat in Student A's face. This is what Colorado, land of the tolerant libs, allows to go on and on for months in their elementary schools, which you pay for with federal tax dollars. The ADL made it clear that this child's family notified school officials and district administrators of what they already knew each time that they learned about a new race-based incident involving Student A, many of which occurred in class, as we just covered, where there were presumably teachers. And the family is prepared to provide the email records to prove how many times they addressed the ongoing race-based violence with their child's school and got nowhere. As I said, the school knew what was going on because, as the complaint alleges, one teacher who was present during the strangulation assault told a detective with the Boulder Police Department that she did not bother to report that attack to school administrators. And that admission is contained in an actual police report that was attached to the federal filing of this civil rights case. The school district did conduct a bullying investigation with a report that is dated December 15th, 2025, and one student received the minor punishment of what was described as being a 1-week-long suspension, although it is unclear whether that student actually served even the full amount of that week consequence. And what about all of the assaults after that? A second police report on a separate incident has also been requested by the complainants, but they are waiting to receive a copy of that report from the Boulder Police Department so that they can attach it to this filing. Meanwhile, the complaint cites the district's own policies, including Boulder Valley School District's policy on the rules of student conduct. The victims argue that the school's response fell way short of even its own stated standards, let alone coming anywhere close to meeting the requirements of federal civil rights law. This stuff is not optional. You will abide by it. The shameful case in which this awful behavior has permeated to children, primarily due to the sickness online, a lot of which is promoted by politicians, merely represents the nationwide surge in anti-Semitic attacks in this country, many of which have taken place in K through 12 schools. And that surge is well documented, despite the fact that civil rights advocates say that physical assaults targeting Jewish students remain underreported and underdisciplined when they are reported, pointing out that this is not an option. Schools have a binding legal obligation to respond meaningfully when racial harassment rises to the level of this kind of hostile environment for students. But the very same teachers who preach about the racism of the past and pat themselves on the back in the delusional belief that had they been there, they would have been on the side of angels, do nothing in the face of the present racism, which proves them delusionally wrong. Keep lying to yourselves.